Dr. Thane Blackwood wiped the sweat from his weathered brow as he carefully brushed centuries of dust from the crystalline surface before him. The ancient structure rose from the crimson sands of Zephyros, prime like a sleeping giant, its obsidian, walls reflecting the twin suns in mesmerizing patterns. After 3 months of painstaking excavation, his team had finally reached what appeared to be the heart of the ruins. "Professor, you need to see this," called his research assistant, Marcus, from deeper within the chamber. His voice echoed with barely contained excitement through the cum system. Thane made his way through the narrow corridor, his boots clicking against polished stone that seemed untouched by time. The Zephyrian workers had refused to venture this. Deep into the ruins, muttering about sacred spaces and cursed vessels in their melodic language. Their superstitions had cost him valuable time, but perhaps it was for the best. Some discoveries required a delicate touch. The corridor opened into a vast circular chamber that took Thane's breath away. Bioluminescent crystals embedded in the walls cast an ethereal blue glow across surfaces covered in intricate hieroglyphs. But it was the object at the chamber's center that made him freeze in wonder. A sleek vessel, no larger than a shuttlecraft, hovered silently above a raised dais. Its hull seemed to be crafted from a single piece of some unknown metal that shifted between silver and deep purple depending on the viewing angle. Organic curves flowed seamlessly into geometric patterns, creating something that was both alien and hauntingly beautiful. "The preservation is incredible," Marcus whispered, setting up his scanning equipment. "According to these readings, the atmospheric controls in here have been maintaining perfect conditions for over 2,000 years. Thane circled the craft slowly, his trained eye cataloging every detail. The design was unlike anything in the galactic databases, not Sephorian, not any known species. Yet something about its elegant lines felt familiar, almost nostalgic, though he couldn't place why. "Sir, we have company," Marcus announced, pointing toward the chamber entrance. A group of Zephyrians entered, their tall, graceful forms draped in ceremonial robes of deep green and gold. Their skin held a subtle iridescent quality, and their elongated ears marked them as members of the planet's dominant species. At their head walked a figure Thane recognized, High Curator Nex Grimthorn, one of the few Zephyrians who had supported the archaeological expedition. "Dr. Blackwood," Nex said, his voice carrying the musical quality common to his people, "you have found the slumbering vessel. This is ... unexpected. Slumbering vessel?" Thane raised an eyebrow. "Your people know of this craft?" "Know of it?" "Yes, but none have seen it for 7 generations." Nex approached the dais with reverence. "Legend speaks of a ship that can only be awakened by one of pure Zephyrian blood, a descendant of the first builders. Many have tried over the centuries. All have failed." One of the younger Zephyrians, a female with intricate silver tattoos covering her arms, stepped forward boldly. "Perhaps the legends are mere stories, Elder Nex. How can we know without trying?" Before Nex could stop her, she placed her palm against the vessel's smooth hull. The chamber fell silent, everyone holding their breath. Nothing happened. The young Zephyrian pressed harder, desperation creeping into her expression, but the craft remained dormant. "A bloodline has grown thin," Nex said sadly. "Perhaps the vessel will never wake again." Thane found himself drawn forward, almost against his will. The ship seemed to pulse with a subtle rhythm that matched his heartbeat. His scientific mind screamed warnings about contaminating the site, but something deeper urged him on. "Professor, don't," Marcus began, but Thane was already reaching out. The moment his fingers touched the metal surface, the world exploded into light. The vessel's hull blazed with intricate patterns of energy that raced across its surface like living circuitry. A deep, resonant hum filled the chamber, vibrating through the stone floor and into their bones. The craft slowly rotated, revealing seams that had been invisible moments before, and with a soft whisper of escaping air, a doorway materialized. The Zephyrians fell to their knees in reverence and terror. Nex's eyes were wide with disbelief as he stared at Thane. "Impossible," he breathed. You are human. How can this be?" Thane stared at his own hand, still pressed against the now warm metal. He felt a strange tingling sensation, as if something was awakening not just in the ship, but within himself. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. A young female, Zephyrian who had tried to activate the vessel, looked up at him with a mixture of awe and something else, suspicion, perhaps even fear. "The prophecies speak of the Awakener," she said slowly. "But they always said it would be one of our own." Marcus was frantically scanning the vessel with his equipment, the readings causing his eyes to widen. "Professor, the energy output is off the charts. And there's something else. The ship's broadcasting some kind of signal. It's being answered." As if summoned by his words, the sound of running footsteps echoed through the corridors leading to the chamber. Shouts in the Zephyrian language grew closer, filled with alarm and anger. "You must go," Nex said urgently, struggling to his feet. "The temple guard will not understand. They will see your awakening of the vessel as desecration, possibly an act of war." Thane looked from the open doorway of the vessel to the approaching sounds of the guards. Every instinct told him to step away, to return to his careful, methodical world of academic research. But the ship hummed with welcoming energy, and he could feel something calling to him from within its ancient confines. "Professor," Marcus urged, gathering his equipment, "we need to leave. Now." The first of the temple guards appeared at the chamber entrance, tall, armed Zephyrians in ceremonial armor that gleamed with the same energy patterns as the awakened vessel. Their leader pointed at Thane with a weapon that crackled with contained lightning. "Step away from the sacred vessel, outsider," the guard commanded in accented galactic standard. "You have committed blasphemy." Thane raised his hand slowly, but the ship pulsed brighter at his movement, as if responding to his emotions. The guards took a step back, their weapons raised, but clearly uncertain how to proceed. In that moment of hesitation, the young Zephyrian woman made her choice. She leaped to her feet and positioned herself between Thane and the guards. "Wait," she called out. "Perhaps the ancestors chose differently than we expected." The guard leader's expression darkened. "Princess Vela, step aside. This human has violated our most sacred laws, Princess." Thane filed that information away as he studied the brave young woman who had chosen to defend him. Her silver tattoos seemed to shimmer in the vessel's light, and when she glanced back at him, her eyes held a depth of intelligence and determination that intrigued him. "The vessel has been silent for 200 years, Captain Dex," Vela said, firmly. "Now it sings with life. Perhaps we should listen to what it's trying to tell us." The standoff stretched taut as a bowstring, with Thane at its center, one hand still touching the impossible ship that had chosen him over an entire civilization of its supposed rightful heirs. Princess Vela Starweave had always been drawn to the forbidden sections of the royal archives. While her tutors droned on about proper court etiquette and diplomatic protocols, she found herself sneaking away to study the sealed prophecies and ancient texts that spoke of times when the galaxy was young and full of wonders. Now, standing between the awakened vessel and the temple guards, she felt the weight of those secret studies pressing upon her shoulders. The human archaeologist, Dr. Blackwood, she remembered, watched her with keen intelligence, clearly trying to assess whether she was ally or threat. "Princess," Captain Dex said, his voice carefully controlled but edged with warning, "your father will not be pleased if you interfere with temple business." Vela straightened, drawing upon every lesson in royal authority she'd ever received. "My father is not here, Captain. I am, and as heir to the throne, I have the right to investigate any matter that concerns the welfare of our people." She could feel the tension in the chamber, like a living thing. The other Zephyrians looked between her and the guards, uncertain which authority to follow. Elder Nex remained on his knees, his weathered face a mask of confusion and fear. "The vessel chose him," she continued, gesturing toward Thane without taking her eyes off the captain. "In 2 millennia, it has responded to no one. Not the high kings, not the most blessed priests, not even the supposed pure-blood descendants of the first builders. Yet this human touches it, and it awakens. It's an abomination," one of the younger guards spat. "The sacred vessel contaminated by alien touch." The words hit Thane like a physical blow, and the ship responded to his emotional state, its humming growing louder and more agitated. The guards stepped back further, their weapons charging with nervous energy. "Stop," Vila commanded, and something in her voice carried such authority that even the guards hesitated. She turned to face Thane fully, her iridescent skin catching the vessel's glow. "Dr. Blackwood, may I approach?" Thane nodded, fascinated despite the dangerous situation. As she drew near, he caught her scent, something like starflowers and ozone. Entirely alien, yet somehow comforting. Vela studied his face intently, as if searching for something hidden in his features. "You have dreams," she said suddenly. It wasn't a question. The unexpected statement made Thane blink. "Everyone has dreams. Not like yours." Her voice dropped to a whisper that only he could hear. "Dreams of flying through star-scattered void, of ships that respond to thought rather than controls, of a time when the barriers between species didn't exist." Thane's breath caught. The dreams had been growing stronger over the past year, so vivid that he sometimes woke expecting to find himself at the helm of some impossible craft sailing between worlds. He'd never mentioned them to anyone. "How do you?" "Because I've had them too," Vila interrupted softly. "As have others, scattered across the galaxy. The awakening calls to those who carry the gift." "Princess Vila," Captain Dex's voice cut through their private conversation. "Step away from the human. The High Council has been summoned. They will decide his fate." A chill ran down Vila's spine. If the High Council was involved, then the old powers were stirring. Powers that had reasons to keep the vessel sleeping, to maintain the status quo that kept them in control. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Captain," she said, her mind racing through possibilities and consequences. "The vessel has bonded with Dr. Blackwood. Separating them now could be dangerous." It was a lie, but a plausible one. The guards exchanged uncertain glances, clearly not wanting to risk damaging the sacred craft through their actions. Thane caught on quickly. "The resonance frequency is still unstable," he added, improvising. "Any sudden disruption could cause a cascade failure." Marcus, who had been silent throughout the confrontation, nodded vigorously. "The energy readings are fluctuating wildly, without proper calibration protocols." "Enough," Captain Dex snapped. "You will all come with us to face the Council's judgment." That was when Vela made her choice. She'd spent too many years studying the ancient prophecies, learning about the time before the Great Silence, when ships like this one sailed between stars, carrying hope and wonder. She wouldn't let fear and ignorance destroy what might be the galaxy's last chance to reclaim that lost age. "I invoke the right of royal sanctuary," she declared, her voice ringing through the chamber. "As heir to the throne of Zephyros Prime, I claim guardianship over this discovery and those involved in it." The words hit the assembled Zephyrians like a thunderbolt. The right of royal sanctuary was ancient, rarely invoked, and carried significant political weight. Even Captain Dex couldn't simply ignore such a claim. "Princess," Elder Nex struggled to his feet, his face pale. "Do you understand what you're doing?" The Council will not look kindly upon this interference. Let them come, Vila said no. Her heart was racing. But they will not lay hands upon those under my protection without due process. She turned to Thane, her eyes urgent. Dr. Blackwood, are you able to move the vessel? Thane looked at the open doorway, then back at her. I think so. It feels like it wants to fly. Then we're leaving, now. Princess, Captain Dex stepped forward, his weapon still raised. I cannot allow. His words were cut off as the chamber suddenly shook. Ancient stone dust rained from the ceiling, and the bioluminescent crystals flickered ominously. The vessel's hum had become a song, and that song was being answered. From somewhere deep beneath the ruins came a responding resonance, as if other sleeping things were beginning to stir. Elder Nex's face went white with terror. The harmonics, he whispered. It's beginning the convergence sequence. What's that mean? Thane asked urgently. Vila grabbed his arm. It means other vessels are awakening. And if the prophecies are true, that means the shade touched have been alerted to our presence. The chamber shook again, more violently this time. Hairline cracks appeared in the ancient walls, and somewhere in the distance, alarms began to sound. Everyone, Captain Dex commanded, his duty to protect overriding his desire to arrest. The ruins are becoming unstable. But Vela was already pulling Thane toward the vessel's open doorway. Can you fly this thing? I don't even know how I opened it, Thane admitted, but he was moving anyway. Drawn by an instinct he didn't understand. As they stepped inside the craft, the interior came alive around them. Surfaces that had appeared solid became transparent, revealing a cockpit unlike anything in known technology. The controls seemed to flow and shift, adapting themselves to their presence. It's beautiful, Vila breathed, her fingers tracing patterns of light that danced across the walls. Thane settled into what was obviously the pilot's seat, and immediately felt the ship's systems integrating with his consciousness. Flight paths and technical specifications flowed through his mind, knowledge that had no earthly origin. Hold on, he said, his hands moving over controls that had no physical substance yet responded to his touch like old friends. The vessel rose smoothly. From its dais, ancient mechanisms whirring to life as if they had been waiting centuries for this moment. Through the transparent hull, they could see the guards diving for cover as the craft maneuvered through the chamber's exit with impossible precision. As they emerged into the crimson sky of Zephyros Prime, Vela pressed close to Thane's side, her warmth a comforting presence as the implications of their escape began to sink in. Where do we go now? She asked softly. Thane studied the star charts that were somehow appearing in his mind, showing him paths between worlds that no human database had ever recorded. I know just the person we need to find. Captain Jace Ironwind was in the middle of negotiating the sale of Terran medical supplies to a Rigelian trade consortium when his cum unit chirped with an emergency transmission. The grizzled former military pilot glanced at the holographic display and frowned at the unfamiliar frequency. Excuse me, gentlemen, he said to the insectoid traders, stepping away from the negotiation table in the cantina of Nexus Station. I need to take this. The face that appeared in the transmission was human but strained with exhaustion and worry. Captain Ironwind? This is Dr. Thane Blackwood. I got your contact information from the Archaeological Survey Corps. I need immediate extraction from Zephyros Prime. Jace raised an eyebrow. He'd heard of Blackwood, brilliant center archaeologist, with a reputation for finding trouble in the most remote corners of the galaxy. Doc, I'm not a taxi service. And Zephyros Prime is restricted space. The locals don't take kindly to uninvited guests. I'll pay triple your usual rate, Thane said desperately. And Captain ... I have something that will interest you. A ship, unlike anything you've ever seen. The transmission cut out. But not before Jace caught a glimpse of the background, the interior of some kind of craft with walls that seemed to shimmer and flow like liquid metal. His pilot instincts, honed by decades of flying everything from military interceptors to cargo haulers, immediately recognized something extraordinary. "Damn," he muttered, already calculating jump coordinates to the Zephyros system. 3 hours. Later, his modified courier ship, the Star Dancer, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyros system. Immediately, his sensors lit up with activity. Zephyrian patrol craft were swarming around the 4th planet, their formation patterns suggesting they were searching for something or someone. Jace's tongue crackled to life. "Unknown vessel, this is Zephyrian Defense Command. You are in restricted space. State your business or prepare to be boarded." "This is Captain Ironwind of the independent freighter Star Dancer," Jace replied smoothly. "I'm responding to a distress call from a research team on the surface." There was a pause. "No distress calls have been authorized. Transmit your clearance codes immediately." Jace was already plotting an evasive course toward the planet's upper atmosphere. Whatever Blackwood had gotten himself into, it was clearly bigger than a simple archaeological dispute. "Sorry, Control, but you're breaking up," he said, cutting the transmission and engaging full thrust toward the planet. The Zephyrian patrol ships moved to intercept, but Jace had been running blockades since before most of their pilots were born. The Star Dancer danced between energy blasts and missile locks, her captain's hands moving over the controls with practiced ease as he broke through the atmosphere. Jace's sensors detected something that made him do a double take. A ship was rising from the planet's surface, but it wasn't showing up properly on his instruments. The readings were fragmentary, inconsistent, as if his equipment couldn't quite process what it was seeing. "Dr. Blackwood, this is Captain Ironwind," he transmitted, "on the emergency frequency. I'm in system and looking for you, Captain." Thane's voice came through with obvious relief. "We're in an ancient vessel, but I'm not sure how long we can stay airborne. The Zephyrian authorities are not happy with us." "I can see that. Where do you want to rendezvous?" "There's a problem." Another voice cut in, female, with the melodic accent of a native Zephyrian. "The ship is responding to some kind of automated protocol. It's taking us to coordinates we didn't program." Jace frowned, studying his tactical display. The mysterious craft was indeed following a course that made no strategic sense, leading away from the populated areas and toward the planet's unexplored polar region. "Doc, who's your friend?" "Princess Vela Starweave," Thane replied. "And she's the reason we're not in a Zephyrian detention cell right now." "A princess," Jace whistled low. When Blackwood got into trouble, he certainly didn't do it halfway. "Captain," Vela's voice was urgent, "you need to know the vessel we're in has awakened something. Other ships, buried deep in the ice caps. The harmonics are calling to them." As if summoned by her words, Jace's sensors detected massive energy, signatures emanating from beneath the polar ice. Whatever was down there was big, and it was coming online after what had to be centuries of dormancy. "This just keeps getting better," he muttered, adjusting course to follow the strange craft. The ancient vessel led them to a crystalline canyon carved deep into the polar ice shelf. As they descended, Jace could see structures embedded in the frozen walls, ships, dozens of them, all following the same organic design principles as the craft Blackwood had somehow activated. "It's a fleet," Vela breathed over the com. "The first builder's lost fleet." The vessel they were following came to rest on a platform that extended from the canyon wall, its surface glowing with the same energy patterns Jace had seen in the O. Transmission. He set the Star Dancer down nearby, her landing thrusters sending up clouds of ancient ice dot as he emerged from his ship. Environmental suit sealed against the frigid air, Jace got his first close look at the impossible craft. It was beautiful in the way that only truly advanced technology could be: elegant, purposeful, and somehow alive. Thane and a tall Zephyrian woman emerged from the vessel, both moving with the careful steps of people still adjusting to solid ground after an intense flight. "Captain Ironwind," Thane said, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." Jace shook the offered hand, studying the archaeologist's face. There was something different about Blackwood, a sense of purpose and barely contained energy that hadn't been there in his file photos. "So," Jace said, gesturing toward the ancient ship, "want to tell me how you managed to steal what appears to be a Zephyrian religious artifact?" "I didn't steal it," Thane protested. "It shows me. And according to the princess here, that's got some people very worried." Velia stepped forward, her regal bearing evident even in the bulky environmental suit. "Captain Ironwind, there are forces within my government that have been suppressing knowledge of these vessels for generations. The awakening threatens their power, and they will stop at nothing to maintain control." "What kind of forces?" Jace asked, his military training automatically assessing threats and tactical situations. "The shade touched," Vila said, her voice heavy with dread. "Parasitic entities that can inhabit and control living beings. They've been working through infected members of the High Council to prevent anyone from accessing the fleet." Jace felt a chill that had nothing to do with the polar air. He'd heard whispers of such things in the darker corners of the galaxy species that conquered not through force of arms, but by corruption from within. "And you think they're here now?" As if in answer to his question, the ice above them began to crack and groan. Through the fissures came the familiar whine of Zephyrian patrol craft, but there was something wrong with their flight patterns. They moved with a mechanical precision that spoke of pilots no longer fully in control of their actions. "They found us," Vila said grimly. Thane was already moving toward the ancient vessel, his hand extended toward its hull. The moment he made contact, the ship blazed to life, and throughout the canyon, dozens of other craft began to stir. "What's happening?" Jace demanded. "The fleet is awakening," Vila replied, wonder and terror warring in her voice. "All of it." The first patrol craft broke through the ice ceiling, weapons charging. But before it could fire, one of the newly awakened vessels rose from its berth in the canyon wall. The two ships faced each other, across the crystal expanse, ancient mystery confronting modern authority. Jace's military instincts kicked in. Whatever was happening here was bigger than a simple archaeological discovery. This was the opening. Move in a conflict that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. "Doc," he said, checking his sidearm, "I hope you know how to fight as well as you dig." Thane's eyes were bright with an alien knowledge as he watched the ancient fleet coming to life around them. "I'm learning, Captain. We all are." The first energy blast split the air between the ships, and the battle for the future of two civilizations began. In the hidden caverns beneath Zephyros Prime's northern continent, Kira Nightblade sharpened her plasma blade with methodical precision. The weapon's edge glowed with contained energy, casting shifting shadows across the rough stone walls where maps and tactical displays showed the scope of their rebellion. She was no princess, born to power and privilege. Kira had earned her position as leader of the Shadowborn resistance through blood and sacrifice, fighting against the corruption that had slowly consumed her world's leadership over the past century. Commander, her lieutenant, Tor Grimjaw, approached. "With urgent news. The sensors are going crazy. Something massive is happening at the polar excavation site." Kira set down her weapon and studied the energy readings on the portable scanner. The patterns were unlike anything in their databases. Ancient, powerful, and undeniably linked to the first builder's technology she'd spent years researching. "How many ships?" she asked. "Dozens, maybe hundreds. And they're all coming online simultaneously." A slow smile spread across Kira's scarred face. For 5 years, she'd fought a guerrilla war against the shade-touched members of the government. Always outnumbered, always outgunned. If the old fleet was truly awakening, ... Gather the strike teams, she commanded. We're going to the ice fields. Commander, that's over 1,000 kilometers through hostile territory. Then we'd better get moving. 2 hours later, Kira's modified assault craft Vengeance's Edge streaked through Zephyros Prime's upper atmosphere, its stealth systems straining to hide them from the increasing patrol activity. Her team of 12 elite fighters sat in focus. Silence, each prepared for what might be their final mission. Contact ahead, reported her pilot, Zach Starfury. This is impossible. The signatures match human and Zephyrian vessels, but there's something else. Something that reads as both ancient and completely unknown. Through the cockpit viewport, Kira could see the crystalline canyon opening like a wound in the polar ice. Patrol craft circled overhead like carrion birds, but they weren't attacking. They were waiting. Take us down, she ordered. Stay sharp, everyone. If the shade-touched are involved, expect anything. As they descended into the canyon, Kira got her first glimpse of the awakened fleet. The sight took her breath away. Dozens of vessels that seemed to grow from the ice itself, their hulls pulsing with patterns of light that spoke to something deep in her Zephyrian soul. And there, at the center of it all, stood 3 figures beside a craft unlike any in the historical records. A human male with the weathered look of a scholar adventurer, a Zephyrian woman whose bearing screamed royal breeding, and a grizzled human in a pilot's jacket who was scanning the approaching patrol craft with professional interest. That must be them, Kira muttered. According to intercepted communications, a human archaeologist had somehow activated the long-dormant vessels. Triggering the current crisis dot, she brought her ship down on a stable ice shelf and activated the external comm. Dr. Blackwood, Princess Vela, I presume? I'm Commander Kira Nightblade of the Shadowborn Resistance. We need to talk. The 3 figures turned toward her ship, and she could see the tension in their postures. They were clearly expecting another attack. Commander Nightblade, the princess responded, her voice carrying authority despite the desperate circumstances. I've heard of your resistance movement. What do you want? To help you fight the real enemy, Kira replied, emerging from her ship with hands visible but close to her weapons. The shade-touched have been manipulating both our governments for decades. This awakening threatens their control. The human pilot, Captain Ironwind, according to her intelligence files, stepped forward. And how do we know you're not working for them? Kira pulled back her jacket, revealing a network of scars across her torso, ritual markings that glowed with a faint silver light. These are protection wards, she explained, carved into my flesh by the last free shamans before the shade consumed. They prevent parasitic possession. Dr. Blackwood studied the intricate patterns with scholarly interest. Fascinating. The design principles are similar to the energy matrices in the vessel hulls, because they're based on the same ancient knowledge, Kira confirmed. The first builders left more than just ships behind. They left weapons against the shade. A new voice crackled over the comm channels, cold, mechanically precise, and utterly without warmth. Surrender the vessels immediately, or face annihilation. Above them, the circling patrol craft began to descend, their weapon systems charging with ominous whines. But these weren't normal Zephyrian pilots. The ships moved in perfect synchronization, like parts of a single mechanical mind. The Shade Collective, Princess Vela whispered, her face pale with recognition. They're not even pretending to be individuals anymore. Kira's team had deployed around their ship, weapons ready, but they were vastly outnumbered. Dr. Blackwood, she called out, can you get more of these ancient ships operational? Thane placed his hand against the nearest vessel's hull, and it immediately began to pulse with awakening energy. They respond to me, but I don't understand why. Because you carry the bloodline. A new voice said from behind them. They spun to see a figure emerging from the deeper recesses of the canyon, an elderly Zephyrian whose silver robes marked him as one of the ancient religious orders. His eyes held the weight of centuries, and the same protective wards that marked Kira's skin were tattooed across his visible flesh. Elder Xander Voidheart, Princess Vela gasped. You're supposed to be dead. I have been hiding, the old sage replied, approaching with careful steps, waiting for the awakener to arrive. Dr. Blackwood, your people are not native to Earth. They are the children of the first builders, scattered across the galaxy when the Shade Wars began. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Thane stared at the ancient Zephyrian, his mind reeling. That's impossible. Human evolution is well documented. Your scientists see what they expect to see, Xander said gently. The genetic markers were hidden deep, dormant until exposure to first builder technology could awaken them. You are not the first human to show this gift, merely the first to survive long enough to claim your heritage. The attacking patrol craft were almost within firing range. Captain Ironwind was already moving toward his ship. Fascinating as this is, we need to move. Now. But Xander raised his hand, and throughout the canyon, the awakened vessels began to rise from their berths. Dozens of ships, each one responding to Thane's presence like instruments in a vast orchestra tuning to the same note. The fleet remembers, the old sage said with satisfaction, and it remembers how to fight the Shade. The first wave of enemy fire lanced down from above, energy bolts designed to disable rather than destroy. The Shade wanted the ships intact, Kira realized. They intended to add the ancient fleet to their own forces, but the first builder vessels moved like living things, flowing through the air with impossible grace. Their weapon systems came online with harmonious chimes, and return fire blazed, upward in patterns of controlled destruction. My God, Captain Ironwind breathed, watching the aerial ballet of ancient technology. They're not just ships, they're weapons of war. Elder Xander nodded grimly. Built specifically to fight parasitic entities. Each hull is inscribed with the same protective wards that guard us. The Shade cannot possess these vessels. The battle above them intensified as more Shade-controlled craft arrived, but they were losing ground to the superior technology and tactics of the awakened fleet. Kira felt a fierce joy watching the oppressors who had plagued her world finally meeting their match. There's something else, Princess Vela said, studying readings from her first builder console that had materialized from the canyon wall. The ships are detecting Shade concentrations across the planet. Major infestations in the capital, the orbital stations, even in the deep colonies. Thane moved from ship to ship, each one awakening at his touch and joining the growing armada. How many people are infected? Thousands, Xander replied sadly. The parasites have been spreading for generations, always careful to remain hidden. But now that their control is threatened, they'll abandon subtlety. We need to get to the planet's core, Kira said, her tactical mind processing the implications. If the Shade have a central nest, that's where we'll find their queen. The core? Captain Ironwind looked skeptical. That's molten rock and metal. Nothing could survive down there. The first builders could, Elder Xander corrected. Their final stronghold was built at the planet's heart, powered by geothermal energy, and protected by the strongest wards ever created. If any of them survived the Shade Wars, that's where they would be. The last of the attacking patrol craft fell from the sky, their Shade controllers finally overwhelmed by the ancient fleet's superior capabilities. But Thane could feel something stirring in the depths of the planet, something vast and malevolent that had been awakened by the battle. It knows we're here, he said, his hand still pressed against the nearest vessel's hull. Through the ship's sensors, he could perceive the Shade Queen stirring in her deep sanctuary, calling her scattered children home for a final confrontation. Princess. Vela moved to stand beside him, her hand covering his on the warm metal. Then we go to meet her, she said with quiet determination. All of us together. Elder Xander Voidheart stood at the heart of the largest First Builder vessel as it descended through layers of superheated rock toward Zephyros Prime's molten core. Around him, the ship's organic corridors pulsed with protective energy, keeping the crushing pressure and impossible heat at bay. He had waited 3 centuries for this moment, keeping the old knowledge alive while the shade slowly consumed his world from within. The scars covering his ancient body told the story of that long vigil, each mark a ward against possession, carved with ritual precision by the last free shamans before they too fell to the parasites. The thermal readings are off the charts. Captain Ironwind reported from the pilot station, his hands moving over controls that seemed to shift and flow beneath his touch. These ships are incredible, but even they have limits. Through the transparent hull, they could see the other vessels of their small fleet maintaining formation as they descended. Dr. Blackwood commanded the ship he'd first awakened, with Princess Vela at his side, learning to interface with systems that responded to bloodline and intention rather than mere technology. Commander Kira's resistance fighters were distributed among the remaining craft, their weapons ready for whatever awaited in the depths. How much deeper? Thane's voice crackled. Over the strain evident in his tone. The effort of coordinating the entire fleet through his connection to the First Builder technology was taking its toll. Xander consulted the ancient star charts flowing across his console. We are close. The core sanctuary was built at the boundary, between the mantle and the inner core, where the geothermal energy is strongest, but the metal currents provide stability. I'm reading massive energy signatures ahead, Kira reported from her position on the tactical sensors. Something big down there, and it knows we're coming. As if summoned by her words, the rock around them began to shift and part, revealing a vast cavern that should not have been able to exist at such depth and pressure. The walls were lined with the same protective wards that covered Xander's skin, but these were carved on a planetary scale, their silver light pushing back against the crushing darkness. At the center of the impossible space sat a structure that defied description, part building, part organism, part geometric impossibility. It pulsed with its own internal light, and as their ships drew closer, they could see that it was ancient beyond measure, its surfaces worn smooth by eons of patient waiting. The First Builder's final stronghold, Xander breathed, feeling tears track down his weathered cheeks. I had begun to doubt it truly existed. But as they approached the sanctuary, something else became visible in the cavern's depths. A spreading network of organic tunnels and chambers, black as the void between stars, that seemed to writhe and pulse with malevolent life. The Shade Nest, Princess Vela said, her voice tight with revulsion. It's wrapped around the sanctuary like a parasite. Because that's exactly what it is, Xander replied grimly. The Queen has been feeding off the sanctuary's energy for millennia, growing stronger while keeping the last of the First Builders trapped within their own fortress. The fleet came to rest on landing platforms that extended from the sanctuary's base, their hulls steaming in the superheated atmosphere. As the crews disembarked in their protective suits, Xander felt the weight of history pressing down upon him. Stay close, he warned the others. The Shade corruption is strongest here. Even with our wards, prolonged exposure could be dangerous. They made their way through corridors that showed clear signs of siege, blast marks on the walls, defensive positions hastily erected, and everywhere the silver traces of protective wards that had held back the darkness for uncounted years. Someone's still alive in here, Dr. Blackwood said suddenly, his connection to the First Builder technology allowing him to sense life signs that their instruments couldn't detect. Weak, but definitely present. They found her in the central chamber, an ancient figure so old that she seemed more spirit than flesh, sustained by machinery that hummed with the same energy patterns as the awakened fleet. Her eyes opened as they approached, pupils reflecting starlight that had been old when Zephyros Prime was young. "The Awakener comes at last," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the soul. "I am Keeper Oriana, last guardian of the deep sanctuary. I have waited so very long for one of the bloodline to return." Thane approached carefully, feeling the pull of recognition, despite never having seen this being before. "You're human," he said with wonder. Or what humans were before ... Before we scattered our children among the stars to keep them safe from the Shade Wars, Oriana confirmed. "Yes, young Awakener, you are one of our lost sons, returned home at the hour of greatest need." Princess Vela stepped forward, her royal training helping her navigate this impossible diplomatic situation. "Guardian Oriana, the Shade Queen stirs above us. We've come to stop her before she can spread beyond this world." The ancient guardian's expression darkened. "She feeds on the pain and fear of the possessed, growing stronger with each soul she claims. But she has made one crucial error. In her hunger, she has forgotten the original purpose of this sanctuary." Xander felt a chill of understanding. The confluence engine. The stories spoke of a weapon that could purge shade influence from an entire system. "More than a weapon," Oriana corrected. "A cleansing fire that burns away parasitic corruption while leaving healthy life untouched. But it requires a tremendous sacrifice to activate." The sanctuary shook around them as something massive moved in the organic tunnels outside. Through the walls, they could see the approach of the Shade Queen herself, a writhing mass of corruption. That had once been Zephyrian, but was now something far more terrible. "She comes," Commander Kira reported, checking her weapons. "My people are in position, but I don't think conventional arms will be enough." "They won't be," Oriana confirmed. "The Queen has consumed thousands of hosts over the millennia. She is beyond physical harm. Only the confluence engine can destroy her." Dr. Blackwood was studying the chamber's central apparatus, his archaeological training helping him decode its purpose. "It's a resonance amplifier," he said with growing excitement. "It takes the harmonic frequency that the first builder ships use and amplifies it across planetary distances. But activation requires the complete life force of one with the bloodline." Guardian Oriana said quietly, "The Awakener must become one with the engine, burning away their physical existence to power the cleansing wave." The words hit the group like a physical blow. Thane stepped back from the device, suddenly understanding the true cost of their mission. "There has to be another way," Princess Vela said desperately, moving to stand beside him. "Some other power source, some alternative method." "I'm afraid not, child," Oriana replied with infinite sadness. "The mathematics of existence are immutable. Life to destroy unlife, sacrifice to purchase victory." The chamber's entrance suddenly blazed with corrupt light as the Shade Queen forced her way inside. She was no longer recognizably Zephyrin. Instead, a writhing mass of parasitic tissue that pulsed with stolen vitality. Dozens of faces appeared and disappeared across her surface, the remnants of her countless victims. "The Guardian still lives," the Queen spoke with the voices of the consumed. How delightfully persistent. "But her vigil ends now, as do you all." Tendrils of corruption lashed out, seeking to infect and possess. But Kira's fighters responded with disciplined fire, their blessed weapons cutting through the parasitic mass. Princess Vela activated a first builder defensive system, barriers of pure energy that held the Queen's advance momentarily. "Now would be good," Captain Ironwind shouted, laying down covering fire with a plasma rifle that seemed almost primitive. against their cosmic enemy. Thane looked at the Confluence engine, then at his companions, then at Guardian Oriana. If I do this, will it work? Will it save not just this world, but all the others the Shade have infected? The cleansing wave will spread through hyperspace. Oriana confirmed. Every Shade parasite within 1,000 light years will be destroyed. But Thane, there will be nothing left of you to remember. Princess Vela grabbed his arm. You can't. We'll find another way. There is no other way, Thane said gently, covering her hand with his own. This is what I was meant to do. What my entire bloodline was meant to do eventually. He stepped toward the engine, and it responded to his presence with welcoming light. Tell them, he said to the others. Tell them that humanity didn't abandon the galaxy. We just took the long way home. Elder Xander Voidheart watched as the young human placed his hands on the ancient controls, his body beginning to dissolve into pure energy that fed into the planetary resonance system. The old Zephyrian had spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment, and now he made his own choice. Wait, he called out, moving to stand beside Thane. The engine requires tremendous life force, yes, but it does not specify the life must be from one individual. Understanding flashed in Thane's eyes. You're going to help power it. I am old, Awakener. My vigil is nearly complete. Let my remaining years buy victory for both our peoples. One by one, the others joined them. Captain. Iron Wind, gruff to the end, never did like the idea of dying in bed anyway. Commander Kira, fierce and asterisk.